Recording in progress. Oh gosh, I forgot. I also use my Zoom for work stuff, so I don't need to blur my background this time. It is still messy, but I care less. So there's about 15 minutes before the meeting starts, but I figured I'd go ahead and get it going and start letting people come in. Not really looking forward to this. I mean, I'm always looking forward to book club discussions, but when I don't finish a book, it's always kind of a downer. It's my own book club and I can't even finish a book. However, this one's a little bit different because I deliberately did not finish this book. I DNF'd it hard. This is April's pick, The Doomsday Mother by John Glatt. This is Lori Vallow, Chad Daybell, and the End of an American Family. Now, we picked some form of a book on Lori Vallow, Chad Daybell, because the Lori Vallow trial is happening as we speak. It started up, I believe, on April 4th. And there's been lots of updates. We've gotten lots of new information. However, I really did not like Glatt's writing. And of course, I will get more into this during the discussion. I did not like how he wrote. It was very strange, almost bullet point. You probably can see everything is in short paragraphs, just boom, 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 and I found it very hard to read. So I will go into more detail about that once we get it started, but that is what we are discussing, and I can give more of a background on what exactly this book is about. I will say, because I still wanted to read something about this case, when we were first figuring out deciding which book to read about this case, the vote on our book club's website was between this and When the Moon Turns to Blood by Leah Satilli. This one I did finish, and it quickly became one of my favorite books of all time. I loved this book. And when I was deciding which ones to pick, because there's a couple of books written about Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell, I was told that this one was more of the true crime aspect, and this one gave Under the Banner of Heaven vibes, where it more so discusses the religion. So I was predetermined to read both of them. So I'm glad I did, because again, Leah Satilli's writing is phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. I loved it. So if I were to recommend anything, it would be this one. And it actually inspired me to finally start reading Under the Banner of Heaven, which I've had for some time. And I mean, I'm only 22 pages in and I'm absolutely loving it. So I'm super behind on my Mormon fundamentalism reading, but we're finally getting to it. So anyway, we're going to discuss that more in depth. Thank you so much for being here, and I will continue recording once we start the meeting here in about 12 minutes or so. Yay! I do get excited for book club. I'm not saying that. I just get bummed when I haven't finished the book. The neighborhood kids are screaming as well. That's going to be fun to explain to people. This is being recorded for YouTube, so people who weren't able to make it can see the discussion. And so can we get through the housekeeping and make sure I keep an eye on people that are still coming in. So yep, this is being recorded for YouTube. Typically my cats would be screaming at the door, but I let 2 of them in, and they're looking in the hallway, so I'm sure somebody else is sitting right there. So I'll probably be distracted helping them every so often, but that's fine. I'm also live on TikTok, as always, so if I'm looking over here, I'm not ignoring you. I'm also just reading comments and multitasking. I love the amount of animals that are in our life as well. This is amazing. Yeah, Chris finally is like, hello, leave her alone. It'd be awesome if you fed them. If you're watching my live, can you feed them, please? Babe, if you shake the treats, Finn will come running like a bat out of hell. Take them. It's funny. There he goes. Okay. All right. Child free right now. Okay. So as always, you don't have to speak if you don't want to. Hi, honey. You don't have to speak if you don't want to. You don't have to have finished the book. You're always welcome if you would like to just come and hang out with people. I love that. That's such a good feeling. But of course, I would love to hear your opinion on the book as well. And with that being said, people are going to have differing opinions. We haven't had anybody scream at each other yet, but it can happen. So just be respectful. Let's see if everybody could stay muted while we are discussing. And if you have something to say, use the little reactions. It says recognize hand gestures. And now Christopher is singing. So just raise hand whenever you have something to say and we will get to you. With that being said, try and let everybody talk if they get a chance to. I understand some things can get really heated and you can have a lot of opinions. I would love to hear them all, but make sure everybody gets a chance to speak. We typically run for about an hour, depending on the discussion. If it gets, if it gets to a pretty hefty discussion, sometimes it can go for 2. I pretty much reserve my book club Sundays for this, so I'm available. With that being also said, afterwards, once we're done with the discussion and we stop recording for YouTube, I do a little palate cleanser because sometimes we talk about some really dark shit here. So we'll be discussing just stuff we're watching, other books we are reading. Let's stop focusing on morbid stuff for just like a little bit. Let's see, merch. There's still some merch available. I am working on some spring and summery designs right now that involve tie-dye that I'm super excited for. I don't know what those look like, so I might order myself one before I release it for science, just to see. But I will release those very soon. And then, of course, we will discuss other ways to find us, Instagram, Discord, all of that at the end. Okay, now that I'm out of breath, we are discussing The Doomsday Mother by John Glatt. This is Lori Vallow, Chad Daybell, and the End of an American Family. This was voted on. I knew that I wanted to read something for the book club about Lori Vallow specifically, and of course Chad Daybell, because Lori Vallow's trial is happening as we speak. It started, I believe, on April 4th. We have discovered lots of interesting details about the case that are just now being released. Of course, they were saved for the trial, so now we are learning more about certain people's cause of death. So this was our book pick, and I would love to hear what you guys thought of this. I DNF'd this book. This is the first book club book that I have deliberately put down and want to give it to McKay's immediately and don't ever want to see on my shelf again. There have been other times where I have not finished the book club book just because I did not either have time to finish it, I wasn't as intrigued in the subject, and I would revisit later. This is probably the first one that I have just flat out said no mas. So I'd love to hear what you guys have to say. I know some people were talking on Discord already about their feelings on it. So let's get into it. John Glatt, first off, is a pretty renowned journalist and true crime writer. I think some people in the Discord mentioned that they were starting to read some of his other books. I know he has one, I think, on Chris Watts. I think it's called the Family Next Door or something like that. Correct me if I'm wrong. So I would love to hear what you thought of the book. If you've read anything else by this author, if you're going to read anything else by this author, give me the deets. Ping, I'm going to put my phone on Do Not Disturb. And yeah, let's get into it. I would love to hear your thoughts. So whoever wants to chat first, let's go. Let's get into it. There's 2 pages of people. I love when that happens. Anybody else DNF it, hate it, don't ever want to see it again? Okay. Alex, I get so bummed when we get a book that we don't like, and then of course I don't finish it. Okay, anyway. Let's see. It says you're not muted, but you're kind of quiet.
Oh, sorry.
Oh,
yeah,
no,
I think we can all collectively agree that we messed up on the book that we voted for. Since everyone else is reading When the Moon Turns to Blood, which Glatt's book is ruining it for me. Like, because I'm reading it and I'm like, I mean, the new book or the different book, sorry. When I'm reading it, I'm like, oh, I already read this like so many times and I'm like kind of like over it now. But anyways, yeah, someone in the Discord page said it was written in like bullet point form, like format, and I totally agree with that. Like as I was reading it, I was like, yeah, makes so much sense. I didn't like the book, and I think because I almost felt like I had deja vu when I was reading it because it was written in all quotation marks. So I'm like, a lot of it was from like the documentary or things I've seen on TV and all that stuff. So I'm like, where is this coming from? And then I didn't like how he didn't have like a bibliography or like a notes section in the back. So like, I'm like, I've heard this. I know that it's factual, but like, where is it coming from?
There's like no sources in the back?
No, not at all. You didn't even make it that far.
Girl, I'm at page 20.
Yeah,
chapter
like it
6.
was an easy read, but like I didn't want to DNF it because it was for the book club. So if it wasn't for you guys, I probably would not have finished it. Um, so like it was an intriguing story, and like because it's happening and all these other things that are coming out about it, like I think that's what made me stick with it. But
Right.
other than that, like I didn't enjoy the book per se. But then I did write down on page 124, and I might have been like nitpicking at like the writing at this point, but it says an owl bracelet. And I thought that it was an owl necklace, like a pendulum. So I was like, I think I was just like, mistake, mistake. Like this book sucks. So
Find some
yeah,
problems with it.
but yeah, that's what I thought about it. So I think everyone kind of agrees from what the Discord page was saying.
Yeah, I made it to page 36, which is chapter 6, and that's where my bookmark is, and I just never picked it up again. That's so interesting. I mean, that he doesn't have anything in the back. Oh my god, he doesn't. Whoa. I mean, I guess you don't have to, but pretty much
I
every
just find that weird for like a nonfiction book, like
Yeah.
not just like a bibliography, but like even a notes section. Like what's the author's name? For the other book.
Leah Satilli.
Yes, Satilli. So she has a notes section in here, and it's not like anything crazy, but
Oh yeah. My source was this one. My source was this.
so like she has like notes on the chapters. So like who she got her sources from. And I just when I read nonfiction, like I like to know where it's coming from, because if it's interesting, or I like to have something to reference or go find other material on it.
Yeah.
So that was just kind of, I didn't like that.
And I will say, we spoke about this a couple of times. Whenever we were figuring out which, I basically had somebody tell me which Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell books were like out there that we could be reading for the book club, and I was introduced to both John Glatt and Leah Satilli, and it was pitched to me as, okay, John Glatt's book is more so going to focus on the true crime aspects of it, and Leah Satilli is going to focus more on the religion. It's like very under the banner of heaven vibes. So immediately going into this month, I was like, I'm going to read both. I'm just going to read both because I really want both perspectives of that. One, because fundamentalism in any form or extremism is appealing to me. I'm learning so much about Mormonism. And of course, I want the true crime aspect of this as well. Plus, coming from an author that has written a lot of books that I have seen, I would like to, yeah. So I hated this one. This one became one of my favorite books of all time. Oh my God, I cannot recommend this book enough. And I'm going to try and not talk about this the entire time, but it is very doable. But I do have some stuff I want to reference as far as both of them goes. So anyway, let's see. Ashley, hi dear.
Hello. I think I kind of had similar feelings to Alex, where like I had some FOMO. I was like in the Discord channel, like I have a FOMO of everybody who's reading the other book because it sounds so good. But I just tried to read this one. It felt very like conversational, like someone is telling you the story just to your face, and it's like, so it didn't feel very like beginning, middle, and end. It felt like here's a detail, oh, and then here's this other thing that ties into it. But like, writing aside, I was trying to just like get through the timeline of it and just tried to see it as the timeline. And then I was really enjoying like all the discussion in the group chat in the Discord to like see all the articles that were coming up and all of the video commentary on the trial. So it's like, it was really helpful because it was a really quick read with like how it was written. But you know, there's definitely some obvious issues with the writing. But overall, it helped me like see the case as a whole
Sure.
in one chunk, which was helpful. You know, maybe I'll come around to read the other ones at some point.
Cannot recommend it enough. It was so good. It inspired me too to actually start reading Under the Banner of Heaven, because that's been staring at me on my shelf for a while now. And you know, when I talk about wanting to read more about religious extremism and sects and like people who have branched off from major religions, people are like, oh, you haven't read Banner of Heaven yet? And I'm like, I know. So yeah, highly recommend. And then totally agree. It's just like a lot of spoon feeding almost.
Mm-hmm.
And the way, I mean, visually too, when you look at it, it's like chunky. Like his paragraphs are just like, you know,
Boop, 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 boop. Yeah.
And I think it was me that actually said, or probably somebody else, but I definitely have said before that it reads like it's in bullet points, or
Yeah.
almost like a thesis project that somebody really didn't care about. And they were just like writing it for a class. That's the vibe I got though, but I am seeing some people in the chat say they do like it. So I hope I'm not pounding on it the whole time. I'm sorry guys, I really hated this book. Haley.
Okay, so to not completely shit on John Glatt, I did like that it was a very quick read, and with me not knowing a bunch of information about the case, I felt like, okay, I got a good gist of what's been going on, but it was very much like, here's an info drop, here's an info drop. And I did hate how often he talked about how attractive Lori was. I was like, how many times? And I didn't even realize when I was reading it, he was like, oh, the sexy shirt she wore on Wheel of Fortune. And then I saw the video you posted on Instagram with the actual shirt. And it's literally just a very basic, like pink long sleeve shirt. And I'm like, sexy wear, John, literally. So yeah, it's the amount of times he commented on her body and her looks. I was not a fan of that. Oh yeah, there's the shirt. Not sexy, right?
Sexy.
There we go. But I did listen to When the Moon Turns to Blood as an audiobook, and it's actually read by Leah Satelli. That one is fantastic. So it was some of the same information John Glatt gave, but I feel like the way she presented it was a lot more respectful and not as much focus on Lori and her looks. So
I also want to point out that if you look up Lori Vallow Wheel of Fortune, my TikTok video comes up. This is my video. That's cool. Yeah, I loved the way, I was actually going to point that out. Whenever the Wheel of Fortune chapter was introduced in Leah Satelli's book, it starts off with like this fascinating history of what the Wheel of Fortune like means. And for a second there, I'm like, what the heck is going on? Because sometimes she would start off a chapter and you wouldn't really know where it was going. But and of course I have a million tabs and it's going to take me forever to find it. But she had this just really fascinating introduction about the Wheel of Fortune was this, and nobody just like signs up for this. That was really interesting too, is how to get on Wheel of Fortune is actually pretty, it's a long process. Like you can't just, throw a name in a hat and get picked. I also love too that it's probably going to be near the front. What am I thinking? I don't even remember what I was going to say. I'll find it eventually. But she had a really interesting way of weaving the story in and like setting the mood and the tone, especially when it came to like introducing Lori. She would describe, John Glatt was very much like, she was born on this date at this time to the parents of these people who were crazy, and this happened, and then this happened, and then this happened. But Lisa Tilly would say it was a warm summer day, and like she would just like weave this story for you and like what was happening during this time period, what was happening during this year, and it was so well written. It was much more immersive. But I mean, some people really don't mind the way that John Glatt's stuff is written. Like people would rather just be given that sort of information, and they don't want anything like too lyrical, too much prose. So anyway, thank you. And then Kristen, hi.
Hello. So I think am out of the norm a little bit where I actually did enjoy the book.
No, I love to hear that. Please say that. Please, there be one.
I didn't, I agree with what everyone else is saying, how it definitely felt like it was written from a bullet standpoint of, you know, A, B, C, D. But I guess for me, I did enjoy it because I did, like someone else had mentioned, like I did learn a lot from it. As well as I just every single chapter, I was like, this is bonkers. This can't get more bonkers. And then it just kept getting more bonkers. And it was just towards the end. I mean, I'm even still mad because I ended up finally watching the Netflix special that I think a lot of people talked about in the Discord.
Oh, yeah.
I hadn't watched it when it first came out. And so between finishing the book and then finishing that today, like my blood is boiling. And I am so mad and I feel so bad for these poor babies. And it's a fascinating story. It's horrible. Don't get me wrong. Like I wish this never had happened, but I did actually really enjoy the book. I did find it helpful, but yeah, it definitely could have been a little bit better if it was more, you know, less textbook style per se, but I did really enjoy it. And I read it rather quickly compared to the previous book.
Yeah, it was a quick read. It definitely was. The 36 pages that I did read, I mean, they went by kind of fast, and it was when I first picked it up too. I mean, you can tell it is kind of smaller too, so I was like, sweet, this will be a breeze. Have you read any of his other books? Do you plan on it?
I haven't, to be honest with you. I'm not familiar with him, so I am kind of curious to maybe read something else to kind of compare it to. But I definitely just bookmarked the other one that you were talking about, that I think I would like to read that.
Yeah.
It sounds really good.
Yeah, that one seems cool. I think some people are running into the same issues of potential, you know, misogyny, but if it works for you, like this type of style, then I think he would be good, because he's written like, I want to say 3 or 4 books about really popular cases like this. So I'm so glad. Yeah, if you loved it, please tell me, so I feel less crazy. Please don't. Hi, Leanne. How are you?
Hi, doing well. How's it going? Good.
No.
Living the dream.
Living the dream. This past month has been wild. But I'm so happy you're here.
Yes, I'm happy to be here. So I actually enjoyed the book. Fun fact, this is the first book that I ever read in one sitting. I started it and like I took like a 20-minute break because I was hungry and I wanted to eat dinner.
Oh my God.
And then immediately finished and finished, or I like ate and then finished the book. I don't know. And maybe because I've heard like in the Discord people not liking it. So then I start questioning and I'm like, huh. And I do agree with what everyone said, with like, especially with the quotes, that did get a little annoying because I couldn't understand like who was saying what and like where were we? Where was this? What was like the context of these quotes? Like where did they come from? But I thought the writing was really easy, and I ended up buying 2 more of his books. And then this month I read The Family Next Door. I ended up reading that shortly after, and I read that in a couple days.
I'd love to hear that. That's awesome.
And I think also what kept me in the book when I was reflecting on it was I didn't know much about the story, and I didn't realize all the turns or like how the story was going, and like I kind of would zone out, and then something like really dramatic would happen. Like, oh my gosh,
yeah,
what? And I had to keep going. I just had to keep going, and I just read it in a couple. You know, it was more like 3 or 4 hours, I think, just straight reading.
This is one of those cases where when you think it can't get worse, it like suddenly does, and then it gets even more crazy, and then it gets worse again, and then you get really confused as to how we got here, and then it gets worse again, and you're like, oh my God, like how did we get to where we are right now? How did this just slip under the radar? Anyway, I'm so glad you enjoyed the book though. Do you find The Family Next Door to have very similar, like, I keep calling it chunky, and that's not to be mean, but like the chunky paragraphs kind of like just information like that, or?
Yeah, I did not like The Family Next Door as much as I liked The Doomsday Mother. It was, again, with the quotes, there was a lot of typos, which I just kept finding. And I was like, really? Like, did no one proofread this? Did it just go to production? Like, what happened? That was frustrating. But again, that was a story where I just was like, wow, this is an insane story. How did this happen? So it's like, does he have the advantage of writing about these really just like like stories that you don't really think could actually happen?
Yeah.
Like, is that working to his advantage in this case? Where his writing doesn't have to be as good.
Right. It's one of those authors where they're just happy that they have another John Glatt book, so they don't even look at it. They don't even care. They're like, sweet, we have this to put on the shelves. Yeah. Awesome. No, I'm so glad. I'm so glad it worked for you. And of course, I'm always interested in hearing more about the Chris Watts case. That's what it's about, right? That's the
It's the family. I don't remember their name now. That's great. Where the 13 kids were
oh no yeah, it's yes, and like 2 of them escaped or something like that.
Yeah, 2, and then 1 got scared and went back, and then it was like the other daughter kept going, called 911, didn't know how to spell her own last name, didn't know her address.
Didn't know, like, they asked her about like medicine or something like that, and she had no idea. They asked her like something, and she had no idea what it even meant.
It was medication, yeah. She's like, I don't know what that means.
What I'm thinking of is another book called The Perfect Father, which John Glatt did write about Chris Watts. That's what I'm thinking of. Man, bummer. I really want to read The Family Next Door.
I recommend it, but there's a few things in there that are like,
Turpin, you're correct. Yeah, Turpin. Wow. I forgot about that. Sorry. That's just one of those cases that will like forever stick with me and haunt me. Okay. Thank you. I'm so glad though. That's so awesome. Really quick before we continue, I did find it chapter 10, about just under halfway through, of When the Moon Turns to Blood by Leah Satelli. She starts off chapter 10, which is page 125. And when I first started reading this, I'm like, where's this going? In the 16th century, the goddess Fortuna was often depicted in paintings as blindfolded, standing over a spinning wheel of fate, the Wheel of Fortune, in total command of stopping it, but completely unaware of where the needle would land. In some paintings, Fortuna was shown cracking the wheel blindly, turning and turning the giant mechanism. Alone, she chooses either great fortune for the world or a terrible fate. By 2004, Lori Cox was 30 years old and had changed her name to Lori Ryan, adopting the surname of her third husband. In a video from that time, she smiles and laughs with her whole body as she stands over a giant spinning wheel. Her eyes are wide open, almost sparkling under bright television studio lights. She wears a pink bubblegum V-neck sweater. In 2004, the American game show Wheel of Fortune was in its 29th year. Not just anyone can stand at the wheel. Interested players must apply, sending the producers of the show an application and a headshot, and especially passionate fans will make a video presenting a case for why they specifically would be a great contestant. Lori was ready-made for television, pretty, perky, flirty. Her hair was perfect. I just loved how that was like introduced way more than the other one. So anyway, I had to pick that out. And of course it was tabbed at the top. I could have just easily found it or whatever. Anyway. Bird.
Hello.
Hi.
So I was really excited to read this book, and I'm someone who liked the book as well.
Good.
I kind of am in a very weird space when I first started reading it, because I actually didn't know who Lori Vallow was. I didn't know anything about the case. I don't know what rock I was hiding under, but I had no idea about any of the details. So I think I enjoyed the book. Yeah, I think I enjoyed the book because it was like very eye-opening. I tried to, when I saw that the trial was, first starting, when I started reading the book, I was like, okay, I'll go back into it. I don't want to know anything when I go into reading this, because I want to be, just kind of not surprised, but I want to learn about it as a case, I guess, not as a trial. So I went into it, I read it, and I think it was like in a day. It was a very quick read, just like everyone else has said. It's very easy. His style isn't my favorite, but I did enjoy that it was such an easy read because the story itself is very compelling and terrible and tragic. And at the same time, it triggers that morbid curiosity that we all have. The reason that I think I kind of liked it is it reminded me of like a episode of like 2020 or Dateline. Like it was very topical, very superficial with like details or quotes and stuff, but I could hear that narrator's voice, the really famous one, as I was reading it. So I think that's why I enjoyed it. And I was at the end of the story, though, I was left with more questions than answers. So that was really nice to kind of go into. Now I can actually look stuff up that's happening with the trial. But I'm not caught up on all of those details as of yet. And I haven't been very active on our messaging board. So I am enjoying kind of going through it now. But I did have a question. Was there ever any follow-up with I want to say it was Chad's wife and someone else who had like pink foam on their body after they were discovered? Does anyone else remember that? Because it was mentioned twice in the book. And as far as I know, her toxicology report had been completed, but it hadn't been released. And that was really interesting to me. And it was just a small detail. It was mentioned twice and it was never brought up again. And I was like, wait, that's so important. What was that? So I don't know if anyone read any more about it, but that's been keeping me up at night.
I'm going to go ahead and mute you because I think there's a little bit of feedback. But yeah, I think so. Ashley put in the chat, Alex had pink foam, and I think that's correct. I want to say pink foam I know I do wish the trial was being televised. Is that a what happens after asphyxiation? Because I know Tammy, her autopsy report was finally, it said that she was suffocated. And then that's also what we just found out about JJ. I think that's what that is, but I could be very wrong. So if anybody has any insight on that, please go ahead and shout it out. And people are saying too in the TikTok live too, they actually was just talking about this during the trial this week. Tammy and Alex had red foam. They just talked about it. That was asphyxia. I don't think they've released a toxology, but they did rule her cause of death was suffocation. Yeah, so that could be what that is. I you know what's interesting? I don't think that was mentioned in Leah Satilli's book at all. So that is something that we would only be getting in Doomsday Mother. So yeah, I don't know about that one. I think that is asphyxiation though. Ooh. But yeah, and let me know if there's any other updates happening in the trial that I have been missing, because it's kind of hard to keep up with it since it isn't televised. But thank you. I'm glad that you're here and enjoyed it. Rafe.
Patches.
Hi, dear.
Hey, buddy. How are you? Okay, so I have really mixed feelings about the author because of what everyone else has kind of said. But I wanted to give this book a shot. I am a Discord lurker, by the way, so I appreciate all of you guys. It's wonderful to watch the chat and everything like that, but my brain, there's just too much else going on that I was like, but I love to lurk. So thanks for the suggestion to read the other book, because I did, and I really liked it. But my issue with him, with Glatt specifically, is that y'all are right. I mean, there are so many editorial errors in his books. I had read The Family Next Door as well, and I mean, I'm kind of like grammar and stuff like that. It just, my brain picks it out. I think it's because I majored in English in college, so I'm just like, wow, I just want to red mark everything. So that was part of why I didn't DNF. But the other thing was the unbelievable misogyny. I mean, the fact that I actually had an issue right up front with the title of the book. It's like, yeah, oh yeah, the Doomsday Mother. It's like, and then it's like, oh yeah, and Chad Daybell. You know, because I mean, the dude was I mean, well, both of them are complete garbage. Let's just go ahead and just say that. I don't want to say that one is like less or more garbage, but I just came off with it was like, oh yeah, the sexy this and the da 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 and attractive and blah. I'm like, come on, you motherfucker. I mean, just stop. Seriously. And that and the grammar, I was done. I got a little bit further than you. I think I got through like the first 6 chapters, and then I started reading the other book. I want a beer too. Thank you. But yeah, it was, I don't know. I just couldn't read it. It wasn't great. Yeah, it's so disappointing. And I couldn't help, and this at least it's just for me. Like, it's hard for me to read true crime books without hearing that TikTok music in the background, the do 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 do. That's behind every single goddamn motherfucking true crime thing. I mean, it's like, and like I could hear it, like him reading it, like in my brain over top of it, and I was like, because it just seemed like so, like Lori Vallow was found, blah blah blah, and it's just.
That goes in with the Dateline thing too. We can
exactly, yeah. It just wasn't for me, and it wasn't for me. But the second book so far, I'm a little over halfway through, and I am liking it so much more. I feel like I'm getting kind of like what a lot of other people said. I'm getting a lot more insight out of it. I really enjoy the reading style. And again, this is my second book that I've read by him. I also read The Family Next Door. Same problem. He's just not my type of author. He can make the most compelling story just make me want to throw the book across the room. So and I'll end by saying, hi neighbor, hi Becky, and that's it.
I love that. I love it. No, it's always it bums me out whenever we have books that the vast majority of people don't like, but I don't think this was the lowest rated one yet. It's like a 6 out of 10 for our average, and I think The Great Mortality was lower than that. I think it was at like a 5 something, which I don't even think that one was the lowest yet. So it's been worse, but I mean, it bums me out. I was going to say something because you said something. I definitely feel like I'm a perpetuator in the true crime music in the back. I feel like that's my fault.
I wasn't calling you out. No, it's just it's now become such a trope and cliche. Like I like hear the first 3 notes, the do do do, and I'm like, oh, it's like this is either going to be a spooky story or it's going to be a true crime. I don't even have to look at whose profile it is. I just know it's going to be spooky or it's going to be true crime. And it's like there are so many other songs out there. Like throw me some Ghosts, throw me some hard metal or something like that. I mean, anything beside that stupid sound. So yes, thank you.
My 7 inches of satanic panic over here. I got you. No,
all hail.
I know, I love them. Now there's like a Five Nights at Freddy's song that's going around that's like behind tornado videos that keep fucking popping up on my For You page now. Why? I don't know. But I love the comments on those types of videos. It's like, imagine dying in this awful, brutal way just for a TikTok to be made about you with Five Nights at Freddy's music playing over top of it. Wow. But yeah, bummer. I hate that you didn't like Glatt, but I'm glad that you are enjoying Satilli. Yeah, I definitely felt like I was getting more out of this too, because when it comes to religious extremists and people who have this agenda and have written books about this, and there's so much evidence and so much proof of their texts just saying the weirdest shit back and forth about people being dark and people having this like energy to them, and there being like a scale and them having numbers. When I read stuff like that, it's okay. I want to read more about why they think that, and I think that that's why I really love Leah Satilli's writing, because she really gives this background on where that came from. Who was Joseph Smith? Where did Mormonism come from? Like, who are these religious sects that have branched off, like FLDS? And there's still people out there who practice polygamy. It's like, this is a can of worms that you can't just like open and expect nothing to happen and like just, surface level stuff. I mean, it goes deep, and it's crazy because there's a lot of people who believe in this stuff. And I really hope I'm not trying to, you know, shit on Mormonism. I don't know if anybody in here is Mormon. I put that in the Discord as well. I was like, I really hope if you're Mormon, say it now, because I feel really bad that I sounds like I'm gonna be shitting on it. I'm not, but fascinating though, and I really loved how Cecilia wrote that. Anyway, neighbor Becky, this was so funny, and I'm sorry to call you out on this, but I love that I saw you earlier holding up this like what looked like IKEA directions. You're like holding something up, and then you had Pop-Tarts, and I was like, what is she doing?
Yeah, dude, I really want to. I want beer and Pop-Tarts now because of both of you. So
I keep like
thanks.
leaning out of frame because I don't think I can.
Nah, lean in.
I was putting away groceries.
It's like, what is happening up there?
And my kids are little and picky. And so I don't always feed them the best stuff, but my pediatrician assures me they will grow out of it. So
They will.
we'll see. We'll see.
So happy to have you. How are you? How are things? Have y'all met up yet? That's such a personal question.
No, we haven't had a chance
Bummer.
to meet up. I've been
We're working on it though.
We're working on it, yeah.
We are.
I'm getting over a cold, so I've been kind of laying low the last week. And my boy turned 4 on Friday, so
Oh,
there's
happy
been a lot
birthday.
of hubbub with that. So I only read yesterday, I like speed read about 11 chapters of the book, so I could at least talk a little about it. And I mean, look, is it like, you know, is it literary genius? No, but that's okay. You know, there are different, I was trying to figure out how to articulate this, but there's like, even within the true crime genre, there's like good true crime writing and like terrible true crime. Now, I don't think this is super like terrible, but like, it's like an airport book. And there's nothing wrong with that. And I was enjoying what I was finding out. I'm not super up on this case, and I haven't been following the trial too much, but there was like way more bonkers was a really good word someone used earlier. Way more. There's just way more that I'm just like, what? Mm-hmm. Like even the fact that Chris Daybell's like her 5th husband, which, okay, you know, some people do that, but I'm just like, what is going on? And I think part of the weird connection I was making in my brain, and part of it is because her maiden name is Cox, is with the Susan Powell case. Mm-hmm. And her maiden name was Cox and she was the victim, so it's different. But if anyone's familiar with that case with Josh Powell and, again, Mormon, and Josh, the Powell family, crazy, cuckoo, like the Cox family, where I'm just like, how? Like even just the tax stuff and trying to sue over and over again about paying your taxes. Like, right. What is happening? Like, so where I turned the light out last night was like right after her 3rd husband died, which I just thought was so, he doesn't sound like he was maybe the best guy on the planet, but I just thought that was so sad. He just like downward spiraled after he basically had his daughter like taken away from him. And so I'm going to keep reading and I'm kind of curious to find out more, but just even like the weird dynamic between Alex and her, and like, I don't know, the family's really messed up. Yeah. And like sorry, I'm kind of rambling.
No,
like,
you're fine.
Even the whole like, oh, she needed a room of mirrors so she could dance and stuff. I'm like, what? Is this real life? Like, what? And nobody blinked at that. Nobody thought, I mean, hey, we all do weird stuff when we're home alone, but like, she's eccentric to begin with. And I think for a long time, people were just kind of like, oh, that's Lori. She's just a little different. She's just a little eccentric. And now it's like where I'm in the book, it's starting to, people are kind of like, there's like a shift happening of like her beliefs and stuff are actually kind of starting to border on dangerous and like obsessive and stuff. So, so that's where I'm at with it, where it's just like, I guess I just didn't even know like the whole backstory is so crazy. And I just feel really terrible for the children. And that was what was also breaking my heart with this whole saga with her third husband and her daughter, was like, I think eventually her ex-husband was trying to put the child first, but like they were just like putting their little girl in the middle of everything. There was no like in the best interest of her, and it was just trying to get back at each other all the time, and her like concocting all these, well, the way it's presented in the book is that Lori was, you know, coaching her to say her dad molested her and all this. Like,
Yep.
That's just like straight up just like evil. That's evil shit right there. And then I agree with the like bullet point, like I'm not always a fan of that kind of writing. And then also like some of the quotes and stuff from like Colby, and I'm like, that didn't really add anything. Or that like that.
He's an interesting part of this. Because
yes,
he's a huge component, if not the biggest component, in the Sins of Our Mother documentary on Netflix. He was like interviewed the most, and he's
okay. I haven't watched that
recently. Yeah, he's interesting. There's a lot. I think there's a lot to say about. While you're talking, I'm trying to find. I need to take better freaking notes instead of just tabbing to all hell.
Well, yeah.
So I'm trying to say things relevant to what you're saying. Her parents being, here it is. Lori Vallow clearly, and also there was something mentioned in John Glatt's book that I did read that actually was not like hound on in Leah Satilli's book, was the weird relationship between Lori and her brother, and how it was weird, like kind of sexual, and
like other people picked up on it.
Yeah.
Well, and she even like told her like friend, right, when she was like 12 or whatever it was, like, my brother's trying to make passes at me.
Yeah.
Like, ew.
Yeah.
Right. And then like he was going off to his sex trips and stuff in Colombia, wherever, with like, okay, fine. Yeah. But like
it's weird.
It's just weird. So anyway, those were my thoughts. And like, of course, like you said, Patches, like, you know, I know people of the Mormon faith and everything who are completely normal people.
Yeah.
Right. But like, just like some of the similarities between Lori, the family that Lori grew up in, and then like the Powell family, I was like,
I didn't know they were Mormon. I didn't know that.
Sure they were.
That would make sense. I mean,
I'm
they
pretty
were
sure
in like Utah. I'm pretty sure they were in Utah or Colorado or that.
Yes, yeah, Utah. So it's just sort of like, sometimes it's just, you know, and I don't know if it's like the patriarch or whatever, but it's just like these families just get so insular, and then their weird beliefs just sort of like permeate all the children, and like they're just sort of this thing unto themselves. And it's just so strange. Yeah, it's the patriarchy. Yeah, I agree. So anyway, those are my thoughts so far. And I do kind of plan to kind of dig more into the trial. But my impression, even in the trial writer, and I think part of why I haven't been able to watch much or whatever, is she's just so, I don't know, she's just so cold, and she just gives me the ick, where I'm like, I can't even, like,
she's like completely lost. Like, I mean, there's like nothing behind her. It's just like a shell of a human that's like got all these horrible agendas that are just like off the wall. No, and right now I think what she was trying to do, and there's like if we put it in the Discord, probably under the Discord pages we have a channel, or I'm sorry, a category with channels that are for each book, that there's a discussion and an article channel. So I think it's under article, but there was a guy who broke down what was happening recently and why there was kind of a hiccup in the trial, because Lori Vallow was trying to waive her right to be present in the court. And this lawyer was really hounding on the fact that what you do in court should not be held against you. That should not be evidence. But her not wanting to be there was denied, first of all. they said you have the right to be here, but you're going to sit your happy butt right there and stay here.
Well, and fuck you. You have to sit there and listen to what you
Yes.
did. Fuck
Yes.
you. Sorry, that pisses me off.
Yep.
You have to sit there and listen to what you did. And I know whatever, innocent until proven guilty, but fuck you, lady.
I mean,
What?
at this point, allegedly, I have to say that so I don't get in trouble. Come on.
I know we're being recorded.
Has a laundry list of bodies piling up. Like, it's just, there's no way, allegedly. Don't come for me. But I'm so glad there's a character list at the beginning of Lisa Tilley's book, but hell, I still can't remember. Okay, so help me out here. Who was shot? Which husband was shot by Lori's brother? Was it Charles? Charles?
Yes.
So here's something interesting that you see. It's written in these, I don't know if it's in the Doomsday Mother, but it is in When the Moon Turns to Blood. But it's also, the body cam footage is on the Sins of Our Mother Netflix documentary.
Oh.
Charles Vallow is pretty much begging these cops, please, for the love of God, go find my wife. She has my kids. And these cops are asking all these ridiculous questions. They're not listening to him when he says my wife has lost it. And of course, when they finally find Lori and Tylee, Lori is like giggling. She has this like charm, and I don't know what spell she freaking puts on people, but she's able
Very
to
Diane Downs, isn't it?
Oh my God, exactly that. She has just this like energy to her where she can like, it's so, I don't know how to put it, but like these guys, I mean, she had the cops laughing, and it's like, how did this, I mean, the woman had 5 husbands. What is she doing? What is happening here? I don't understand.
And I'll go on mute after this, but like,
you were totally
that had happened before. Now, Alex had not shot her 3rd husband with a gun, but he had stalked him and harassed him and tased him. And same thing, John Ryan was saying to the cops, please help me. I'm being tailed. I'm being followed. I'm being harassed when I'm trying to have visitation with my daughter. Please help me. And they wouldn't do anything.
Yeah.
And then he got tased, but he thought he'd been shot for real. So I'm sure it was very traumatic. And then apparently he had health problems with his heart, like ever since being tased. Like he was just kind of never right after that. And then of course, after they moved to Hawaii and he couldn't see his daughter anymore, he kind of downward spiraled drinking and stuff. But so like,
what the hell is going on here?
Exactly.
And I will say too, and I'm gonna have to say, this is just for the sake of discussion. I'm not trying to sound mean. I'm not trying to do anything allegedly. But how the hell is Melanie Bordereau not in prison right now? She full on admitted to knowing that her husband, am I right about that? She knew of the plot. Her husband right now, Ian, is a different fella, but the guy who was, I can't keep up, man. There's so many names that are the freaking same. I think it was Brandon. Yeah, I think he was.
Is Melanie her niece?
Yes.
Am I getting that right? Okay.
Yes.
The one whose mom died from diabetes because she wouldn't do anything about it?
Precisely.
Okay. Thank you.
Stephen Stacy.
Need a family tree.
They also thought that Tylee was a reincarnation of Stacy. Am I also getting that right? Oh, Jesus Christ. Okay. So also I wanted to point out, you had mentioned Lori's past, and we had definitely seen in both books, we had seen, because John Glatz kind of started with Lori, and I think so did When the Moon Turns to Blood. I'm pretty sure that was more so Lori and then Chad, because Lori's a lot. So Lori had, parents who were trying to, let's see, on page 63 here, in 2010, Barry Cox, Lori's father, let me make sure. Yeah, Barry Cox, father of Lori Vallow, tried to sue the U.S. Department of Treasury, among others. And I'm reading from When the Moon Turns to Blood. Quote, Barry L. Cox is a natural, he wrote this in a complaint. Barry L. Cox, he's writing in the third person, is a natural-born citizen of the United States. The evidence proving the IRS is a fraud is compelling and sufficient. IRS, that's a big word. IRS is rampant and partially responsible for the Tea Party movement. The collection of federal income tax is a sham. The IRS operates in deception and lies to pilfer money and property in broad daylight. Sorry, my underlining went a little crazy. I'm missing some words. The lawsuit was dismissed. Every time this was happening, the lawsuit would be dismissed. And then I went further down here. By the winter of 2020, the Coxes continued to wage a war that appeared that only they were fighting, just trying to constantly sue the U.S. Department of Treasury. While Kay Woodcock and her husband Larry, let me flip to the front here. Kay Woodcock, I'm pretty sure that is the
They are the grandparents of JJ.
Thank you. Keep up, man. Where the hell are they? They're not listed in the beginning here. Wait a minute. Yeah, so the grandparents of JJ were frantically searching the country for their grandson, doing interviews with any podcast or news program that would put them on, begging for information that would lead to finding JJ and his sister Tylee. Janice and Barry Cox, Lori's parents, made no statements about the missing children, and the Coxes were silent. They didn't say a thing. They were too busy. How much money did they owe? It was like $300,000.
Almost $500,000, I think, by the end, because of interest and everything else.
And something too on the topic of, sorry, Christina, you've had your hand raised for so long. Something on the topic too, I was trying to find it while you were talking, and Under the Banner of Heaven, which we also saw actually, if you've seen Keep Sweet, Pray and Obey, which is about Jeff Warren's and those, the FLDS groups, the polygamous groups. When you get to certain parts of, and I don't know which state they were in, where Charles Valla was trying to plead with the police that his wife needed help and he didn't know where his children were. Certain parts of the police are Mormon. And they don't care. They work under Warren Jeffs. They work under these people. They don't care. They see it as part of it. They see it as a religion. They see it's wild.
And Charles was always going to be an outsider because he converted into the religion, wasn't like born into it, right? And she always was saying how she was concerned because he wasn't like as much of a Mormon as her or something like that. I forget the exact phrase she used, but actually, I have my like Phoebe Buffet voice right now. But
get me sick.
Yeah, just this like just all this illogical thinking, like I was saying, even the tax thing of like, well, you trying to take taxes from me is illegal. And it's like, well, you can think that.
Yeah.
But so just like this idea, I guess, of that being above something.
Yep.
Right. Certain rules and certain whatever don't apply to me.
Oh, yeah. And
people
also,
like that are dangerous.
It's being pointed out to me too on TikTok here that there's lawyers and members in the courtroom who are also Mormon. And Lori, turns out one of the latest things that Lori has come out and said is there is an angel on the jury, and that's why she thinks she's going to get off scot-free. And there are people who are genuinely concerned that she might get off. That is a possibility. So that's scary. I took a bunch of notes, but I was also writing stuff as I was learning, as I was going, and I was trying to figure out how easy it was to convert to Mormonism, and it's so easy. You just gotta accept Joseph Smith as your prophet and a higher power, and you're Mormon. I was just curious about that. Anyway, I'm so sorry, Christina. You've had your poor hand raised for so long. I love the books behind you. Hello, Kitty. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Go ahead.
Well, thankfully, it's not my physical hand, so arm's doing fine. No, it's actually good that you guys were kind of bringing it back to the way Lori was raised, because where Glatt lost me was on page 10, when he was talking about the way that in 6th grade, her mom decided that she needed to lose weight to become a cheerleader, would ridicule her in front of her friends if she was eating anything that the mother thought was fattening or bad for her. And then 4 paragraphs later, he explicitly says, under her mother's supervision, Lori had now slimmed down and was in great shape. I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? That's called an eating disorder. I had that parent. I did that journey. I didn't kill any children when I became an adult, but I've been there. And just to hear him be like,
oh, well, it was great. Like her mom helped her really slim down. I'm like, what the fuck is wrong with you? And why do I hate you more than a person who I know killed her kids?
Mhm.
Allegedly.
Allegedly, yeah. I guess we have to say that now. We have to be careful.
And it's like I finished the book, but I just the whole time I'm reading it, I'm just like, I don't like you. And then every time he continues, he's just like, oh yes, her sexy sweater. Oh yes, her this and that. And then his pictures at the end where he's like, here's her bikini photo from the Mrs. Texas contest. I'm like, what does that have to do with anything? Like, how about we get some good pictures of, I don't know, the place where the kids were found dead? Like the photos at the back of When the Moon Turns to Blood were so much more in line with what you would expect from a book like this. I'm like, this is not a book about how you want to be the sixth Mr. Lori. This is a book about how Lori Vallow is a horrible person.
There's her.
There it is.
In case anybody really wanted to see Lori Vallow in a bathing suit, here you go. Lori was also always after Tylee for her eating habits. Somebody said LOL. Chris said LOL Lori. Mr. Lori. After her eating habits made her bleach her hair. Yeah, when she was what, 2 or 3, she was dyeing her child's hair with bleach.
Yeah. Well, and you read that and I'm like, okay, we've got cycles of trauma going on here.
Oh,
Obviously,
yeah.
this woman's never dealt with any of this shit. Does not absolve her of anything that she did, because you got to deal with your shit. You can't just kill people.
Oh, for sure. But there is a part of me that was like, damn. Like I really hate when people do that. Some people should not have children.
Yeah.
Lori's mom evident. Lori evident.
Yeah.
Like just some people who should not be having children.
Yeah. That whole family would have done a lot better if they all just used condoms.
Yeah. I'm hungry. We have goldfish now. We're talking about food. Yeah, I had a little bit before I ate. And now the beer is giving me a headache. The church pressures you to have children. Do they really? I guess that makes sense. I feel like any church pressures you to have children.
Yeah, be fruitful, multiply, make little baby Mormons. Or
The whole
baby
quiverful
whatever.
thing. Yep.
Oh, quiverful. Oh God, I hate that word. That's my moist. Like moist doesn't bother me, but if you say quiverful, it makes me want to turn myself inside out.
That's a whole evangelical church thing too. It is just as prevalent,
Totally.
Oh yes, strengthen your quiver. Women stay at home and be silent and blah 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 blah. Yay, religion.
Yeah. It's easier to just brainwash them from birth than to convert them later.
Well,
amen. Oh wait, not amen. I agree.
Leanne, you had your hand raised. Oh my God, I'm sweating.
Yes. So when Glad we kept talking about Lori and like her looks and her body, I didn't necessarily take note of it, but I'm kind of like skimming through, and then I read the quote on page 11, and I remember reading it like under her mother's supervision, and then I'm like rereading it, and I'm like, I think when I originally read it, I think he had like almost like a sarcastic undertone where it was so like wrong, where he was kind of like leaning into it, and I could be way off base, and then like, and I probably am, and then the breast picture where she's in a bikini, Lori had breast implants to give her an edge. It was like he was leaning into what she wanted out of all of this. It's just how I originally took it.
Lori Vallow graduated from Eisenhower High School on June 12th, 1991. Her yearbook graduation photo shows a sophisticated young lady with long blonde hair in California-style beachy waves. She has a wide smile and is wearing a dark, bustier top and glam gloves with zippers. There are about 16 words I did not need about her graduating high school. Who cares? Who cares? Can you see that? Is that picture included?
Her graduation picture?
Can I see how busty she actually looks?
Yeah.
Blech.
And she was also really obsessed with her looks from what I gathered. in reading things online and from this book. So I thought maybe he was trying to convey that. And also, I was talking to my mom about this, and I was like, this is an attractive, thin, white woman with blonde hair. She got away with everything. And I do think that's worth noting, but he may have taken it too far.
This is really interesting too. I hope I can show you. Can you see her smiling? That's the body cam footage from the minute after her brother shot her husband, Charles. She's just smiling. It's kind of blurry. I'm sorry. She's just having a great time. Grinning, hanging out with the cops, talking. Poor Tylee is standing there, which I was also kind of confused on too with Tylee's involvement that day. And I the word involvement is not the right word, but she like tried to break up the fight between the two, and then ran out of the house, I guess. And that's when Charles was shot. It's all very strange. And again, too, how much of this information was just fed to Tylee? How much was just like, anyway. Hi, Kelsey.
Hi.
Hi.
We kind of steered in the direction because mine is always, and I know where like my professional like job bias always comes in, because I'm always intrigued in reading these in like mental health wise or mentally, like those processes, like what is going into these things. And we had talked, or someone had brought up earlier about like her family and her mom. And I remember reading that part of Glatt's book and thinking, oh my God, this girl never had a chance.
Yeah.
And then you read things like her sister, and I'm going to sit here and armchair diagnose, which I do not advocate for, but we're doing it. I'm reading about her sister, and I'm like, this girl had some form of OCD or anxiety disorder. Like there was something going on there. Alex was what Alex was. I will just leave that at that.
Yeah.
He had whatever he had going on. And so I wonder I've got a few notes in mind where I wonder in what the interplay was between like, is Lori delusional and religion was kind of the gateway into this conspiracy? Like, I'm special, I know more than others, like those mentalities. Is Charles, or not Charles, Chad, there were so many names in this
Right.
in this web of adventure. Was Chad more like delusional, like kind of passive cult leader, and gave Lori this like gateway pathway into having this power and being the center of attention and like this special person that I think she craved from like a younger age? And I'm curious of other people's thoughts, because that has been churning in my brain as I read all of these things and read more. I don't remember who else had said it, but I was also very unfamiliar with this case prior to reading this book, and I just feel like now I'm drinking from a fire hose of the information of what has been going on.
When you say that, it's also interesting because we've barely touched on Chad Daybell. Isn't that interesting? We've barely talked about him because I feel like I have theories about this case and I don't want to get in trouble, but fuck it. So I really want to say allegedly here. I think that okay. I don't think Chad killed anybody. I think it was all Lori. I really do. I think Chad was a delusional teddy bear. I really do. I think he was stupid. I think he was full of it. I think he had delusions of the visions he was getting and all of his like near-death experiences that he was allegedly having that weren't actually happening. Like once he tapped into, he realized there was a market for near-death experiences, but he never really had one. I mean, even his brothers, and I think that was in When the Moon Turns to Blood, his brothers were like, yeah, he went underwater that day, but I didn't think he almost died. Like we didn't have to like bring him back to life or anything. I mean, he went underwater. I mean, that's iffy. I'm sorry, allegedly, but I really don't think. I think it's so overused to say fuel and fire, but oh my God, Chad Daybell is just a can of gasoline and Lori is a bonfire. Like those two, like, I mean, they went so well together because they were both delusional and he had these prophetic teachings and she just ate that shit, ate that shit up. And
that's really mine is I wonder what the interplay was or like how exactly, and we may never know, like what parts of each of them personally really like fueled the other into like the terrible storm that became this situation.
And you know what's super interesting too, and I think it was only mentioned in When the Moon Turns to Blood, there's something so fascinating in the Mormon religion when it comes to near-death experiences, where you really shouldn't talk about it. You really shouldn't talk about it because your prophet is supposed to be like appointed by the higher ups. And if you have people like Chad Daybell, which is why people are excommunicated and why he was excommunicated eventually, which I actually don't think happened until recently, that he was officially excommunicated from the church. Correct me if I'm wrong. But if you are sitting here claiming to be they see you as a false prophet. You could be hearing voices until the night is long, but you can't say anything about it. You're not supposed to. So the people who are writing books about near-death experiences weren't being taken seriously until people like Chad Daybell came along. I mean, he made up his own publishing company to try and like have people talk about their experiences because that was just seen as not a good thing in Mormonism. You don't do that. Anyway, so sorry, Kristen, you had your hand raised. I didn't know if you still wanted to.
Kind of just going off of what you just said. I know we're still learning as the trial is happening and things like that, but I think I agree with you. I don't think Chad actually did anything. I think if anything, Lori and him convinced Alex. I think Alex was the one that did most of it, if not all, because his death is very convenient with the timing. I don't know. I mean, I think Lori definitely, I mean, we're going to learn as things come out, but I think Alex was the main catalyst and was the one that did most of it. And his death and the timing, I forget what day it was, like his death happened a day after something else that was really important happened. I forget what it was, but it's just all too convenient.
And didn't his phone ping in the area like 8 times? Like he was there. He was there that night when everything was happening.
Yes. Yeah. I don't think as much as Chad like influenced Lori and like, you know, made her get to, I think, where she is, I don't think Chad had the guts or the balls to do anything. He seems very coward-like to me. Like he's just his power. Yeah, his power was more so like, let me convince you that this is all happening and you do all my dirty work. But he just seems very coward-like to me. So it'll be interesting to see. And I mean, who knows? We may never know what happened. But I mean, I definitely don't think Tammy died from natural causes. And it'll be interesting if we can find out what exactly, you know, happened to her and who did it, you know?
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. Amber, I was thinking about you earlier because I was drinking Canadian's finest Labatt Blue that you Rochester people love so much. Let's see if I can can I unmute you myself because I see you're driving? I don't think I can. Feel bad. You're driving. Pay attention to the road. Oh, maybe that gave you a notification.
Apartment. So now I was just driving back to my apartment and now I have arrived. So I'm like, I'm gonna give my opinions in my car. Because I was like, y'all don't want to hear me try and walk up 3 flights of stairs. But yeah, no, I was saying like for me, it's like we're also, as much as I think Lori did most of it, we are also forgetting that Chad did smush 120 bees when he was a kid, and his obsession with like counting how many he killed and only stopping because the voice told him to stop like killing the bees. So I think I feel like he had like kind of an interest in the killing part, but like nothing like Lori and Alex did. Like I think he may have killed Tammy. I feel like he might have killed Alex because they say they both had the pink foam that came out of their mouths. So there's something that connects how the two of them died there. But like I think like Chad was more like the, oh my God, all these really attractive women are obsessed with me. I gotta make up shit to keep them here. Because it's like that kind of like having had experience with similar people, like you start off with like a little lie that's not too bad, but then people fall for it, so you have to keep building and building and building and building on it, and it just keeps getting more and more and more and more ridiculous. because it was like kind of like the way that they talk about how he was texting like Zulima, where he was just like, yeah, sure, yeah, your powers are getting stronger, yeah, you did this, yeah, you're
He
fine.
would
I'm like,
like,
it
they
was
would
almost like he was
request
doing it, like,
tornadoes.
it was like just like a very almost wrote it's like, yeah, sure, cool, yeah, you're doing this thing that you're telling me you're doing, cool, sick, all right. And I think Lori had definitely more of like the obviously like the need to be the person in the middle, a center of attention at all times. And like I think she kind of was much more the manipulator on like the evil side of things, where Chad was like a manipulator in like the batshit crazy delusion types that keep it all going. And that reined Lori in, and then she was able to use that to keep her stuff going, because like I think she's very much was the type, she was able to kind of see what everybody's weakness was. Like Chad's weakness was her, Alex's weakness was her, like, and so she just kind of like would like knew that like Alex had this thing for her when she was a kid, so she could hold that against him to manipulate him into doing things that she wanted. Chad was cheating on his wife with Lori, so she could use that against him, like to get him to do what she wanted. Like, and it's just like you could tell it's almost like she just like was like had like all of her like little like strings or hooks out in people, and was like pulling them as she needed, because it's like also you just see like the way she acted, like she had like Charles Vallow's mental health competency thing, she passed with flying colors. A few months later, she has a year later, she has the one needed for her trial, and all of a sudden she's mentally incompetent and they can't have her fit to stand trial for like 8 months.
Yeah.
Like, you can't have that much of a mental health change unless you have either a ridiculously like huge terrible mental health break, which we know she didn't have, because that would have been a lot more obvious, or unless you're faking one of the two. And just, or like the way she talked to all of the cops, where like you have like the dude cops, like, or is it, there was a one, I forget, his like name was like Officer like Edmonds or something. He was like one of like the ones that like she was talking to when Vallow like broke into her car. And she's just like, I don't understand like how you could do such a thing, dude. Like, we gotta protect you, honey. Like, you're not a threat to anybody. And I'm just like, does anybody talk to the cops about how complicit they were in all of this?
Yeah. Yeah.
And also Melanie Gibb, because if Melanie Gibb had never gone and told Lori that Vallow was trying to get into the apartment, he could still be alive.
Melanie Gibb came through though, eventually.
I know, eventually she did, but I'm just like,
came to our rescue.
It was like when like the Moon Principle I'm reading that were like, he lures her over to the house with the phone, and then like she immediately goes and tells like Lori and like one of the podcasters about all of this. So she immediately goes to the police, and I'm just like, if Melanie Gibb had at any point realized like, this is kind of weird, even like a smidgen of this is kind of weird, and not ran to Lori and just kind of like stayed out of it, who like, I'm like, this, we could have been saved this whole shenanigan.
Yeah, I
I
really
feel like, or at least a
loved,
chunk of it. And so
I
like,
really loved how that started. Fudge, now I can't find it. When Melanie Gibb recording their conversations, I loved how that started.
and like, yeah, so that's what I'm saying. And like, I definitely think Alex was kind of like the hitman for all of it.
Yeah,
Right.
that makes sense to
They
me.
like, and he was like the scapegoat, because like they let him in for like, because like I think it was kind of like they had him kind of do all this stuff, and then like, I don't understand why they somehow got him and Zulima to get married. I don't know how that happened. That part is still weird to me. Like all of a sudden, like they met and then they were married, and I'm like, y'all, like that was bonkers. Like y'all got even married faster than Lori and any of her husbands did. Like, but that was the same. Like I think both books said that like there's so much that we will probably never know, because it's all like Alex is like that one like connection that we needed for so many things that like we'll never be able to truly like figure out or understand because he's dead, which is exactly why I think he was killed.
Yep.
Because they knew that if they killed Alex and they'd had Alex doing all of their dirty deeds, then if he was dead, it'd be 1000% harder to pin it on them because they wouldn't have this guy who actually pulled the trigger alive to, you know, because I was like, makes me think now if they were blackmailing Alex into doing these things, like if Lori's like, you know, you don't pull the trigger on Charles, I'll tell everybody about how you were obsessed sexually with me when I was a kid, type of thing, because I can see her doing that, being like, you got to go kill my husband, or I'm going to tell everybody you're a pedophile, or I'm going to tell everybody about your Columbia trips.
Right.
Like, because like, what was it? I think actually John Glatt mentioned it more than, like, gave one more specific than the other book does. They said that he only sent money 3 times. So I'm like, why did he have to send money these 3 times? Because like the other book originally in the book it insinuated that he was doing it like constantly, like almost like a stream of money. But it turns out he was only doing it 3 times. And I'm like, so it's either somebody got pregnant or it was like a hush payment for people not to say anything. Because also it makes me wonder, we know he went down to Columbia to see women.
Yeah.
How do we know the ages of these women? Like, there's that one girl they talk about that like he tried marrying, but we don't know her age. And we don't know the ages of any of these other girls either. Like, for all we know.
Yeah.
He could have been going down, like, as I was just talking, my mind made that connection because ADHD brain.
Sure.
And we're going it faster than like, it's just like, so was that like a payment to like the parents? To be like, don't say anything? Or something of that nature? Like, why did he have to send those 3 payments? Like, it's not like it was a constant stream of supporting somebody. It's like something happened, so he had to pay something. And a few years later, something happened, and he had to pay something. And then a year later, had to pay something because something happened. I'm like, so I want to be like, so what did you do down there, sir? Like,
Right.
now that's like something that's like, for me, I'm like, what were you doing down there?
Yeah.
Like, if you had to like make these 3 different payments.
I'm glad
And that's what I'm saying. I
Melanie
wonder
Gibb.
if Chad and Lori also knew that the extent of like exactly what he was doing in Colombia. And that's also part of like why he had to do what he did, because they're like, we know why you're going down there. Cause like, that's where he went right after, who was it? I think Charles Vallow died.
Yeah.
He went to Colombia for 5 days. So it's not like it was something that was like something people didn't know he did. Because obviously Lori and Chad had to know that he went to Colombia immediately after he killed Lori's husband. And I think also it was like when somebody brought it up, also like for me, the involvement of Tylee was also really weird.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times, because I was like, there's a lot of times where I'm almost like, why is Tylee supporting her mother? Like there was a lot of times where she was like kind of supporting her mother, and I'm like, I can't tell if this is genuine support or what. And then I'm like,
She seemed to do that.
You had your daughter who was actually supporting you in all of this, and yet you still decided that she was a dark spirit and you needed to kill her.
Reincarnated like Stacy.
Yeah,
right?
your reincarnated sister, and yet you still needed to. Okay.
I'm so glad you brought up Melanie Gibb though, because I do want to mention I'm reading from 2 books, of course, that none of these are from Doomsday Mother. I'm so sorry. But when the moon turns to blood, there's a really fascinating part just on page 22 about Melanie Gibb, who was in that circle. She was one of the people that Chad Daybell would text and tell her, like, you know, you're going to do amazing things. And they would like request earthquakes because people piss them off and shit like that. So this was super fascinating because I loved this book so much, and people kept telling me to read Under the Banner of Heaven. I saw some similarities here. And for those who don't know, Under the Banner of Heaven,
I need to get back into reading that.
Oh, it's so good. It's about a murder. It's about a murder as well. So when the moon turns to blood, Gibb explained, So when we work with the Lord and are obedient, he is going to protect us from adversarial darts and all kinds of negative energy. But when we open the door to Satan, he comes in and then he attacks. And then he takes away to make it look like somebody else took it away. But that's not how God works. He doesn't work in darkness. And Lori responds with, I agree with you 100%. And that's what the Lord is doing for me. Exactly what he's doing for me. We have not opened the door to darkness. Darkness is knocking on the door all the time because that's the way the dark works in the light. And I promise you that I have done nothing wrong in this case. And then I started reading this, where one of the guys who was convicted of murdering his
Oh God, that case.
sister-in-law and her infant child.
Yeah, it's like the Lafferty brothers,
Yes.
the two older Lafferty brothers think that they're being told by God that
Precisely.
they need to murder their younger brother's wife and like infant child for some like way to save the world or something. Bless you.
Thank you. He said, so Don Lafferty was quoted saying, you think I have committed a crime of homicide, but I have not. And he insists that he is innocent of any crime, but paradoxically does not deny that he killed Brenda and Erica. When asked to explain how both of these apparently contradictory statements can be true, he said, I am doing God's will, which is not a crime.
I think at one point I remember in When the Moon, I think it's When the Moon Turns to Blood. It's like right at the end of the section called Coven. I think it's like Melanie Gibbs says something that Lori said, and it's like then like the author goes, really what Melanie is saying here is that Lori thought she was above the law.
Yeah.
And like that's how they end that section.
And her father has been spewing about since day one too. I mean, that's totally just, you know, her dad trying to sue the damn treasury.
And it's like, and that's like, for me, it was wild, like having been somebody who's read and tried to educate myself already so much on the different like far right and white supremacist groups and ties and everything that happen to also be mainly in that area already before this. Like, that's why I was like, I opened up When the Moon Turns to Blood. I'm like,
yeah,
the John Birch Society, Bo Grits. I'm like, why are they involved in this? Like, because I'm like, I already know who they were. And I'm like,
right.
Those are like white supremacist, far right type of things. I'm like, excuse me, what?
I just got a book on the Birch Society too that I am so excited to start because I did not realize how involved these subsects of Mormonism are in ties with that, and like how Chad Daybell was essentially a part of QAnon before QAnon was QAnon. Like
it was, and it's just like they like kind of worked there because I was like the alt-right and white supremacists, they're the people who created the Tea Party and libertarians and literally almost anything beyond any sort of, like I've learned like almost anything that's beyond just normal everyday Republican GOP two-party system has like pretty much have some sort of connection to or basis in some weird like far right white supremacist sect or belief or something, just because like that's how they've managed to survive for so long, because they either are they're like concealing their actual beliefs under this other stuff and then bringing more people in so they hear like the like hidden stuff, and then all of a sudden like they kind of similar to like how Chad like started off with like the broader like really just new agey stuff, and then next thing you know he's working in this like batshit crazy earthquakes and tornadoes and 144,000 stuff. It's similar to like how they would do is like you get like the normal just like, you know, oh yeah, blah blah blah, like far right type of stuff, and then like but if you get in further or you get really involved, then it's like well the white race is like the only thing, or we hate Jewish people, we hate black people, and they like then at that point you're so far in, you're just like, oh, that makes sense too, like everything else you've said so far makes sense, so why doesn't this also make sense? And then we end up with really batshit crazy people.
Had a child screaming at the door. Continue.
Because like yeah, because I was gonna say I know it's either part of Idaho or Montana. It's literally like not only is it that part of Idaho and Montana, not only is it kind of like the
Aryan Nation
center point area, yeah, it's like not only is it like kind of like the holy place, the place to be safe from the apocalypse type of thing for Chad Daybell's Doomsday Preppers, but it's also kind of one of the main places where the Aryan Nation and a lot of other alt-right white supremacist sects have their home bases, because that's where like Ruby Ridge happened.
Yep.
That's where that's the area Richard Spencer fled to after he basically got laughed out of society. I think there's like one or two other like places that have like their compounds in that area, because also a lot of them happen to also be doomsday prepper type of people. So
Which
they
was
kind of
new to
just
me,
like,
too.
so they kind of just intersperse their people type of thing. And so that was also, I'm just like, I was just saying, like, I think at one point I mentioned in the Discord, I'm like, it's wild to me that like in 2017, when I was on tour across the US,
Yeah.
I was only 2 hours away from Rexburg at one point, on like, because we had like Jerome, Idaho was one of our tour dates, like a B-list city on like touring places. It wasn't even like Boise or something like that. It was like, but like I looked it up. I'm like, oh, I'm curious now. I'm just like, I was 2 hours away from Rexburg.
Mm-hmm.
And also, there's at least 4 towns in that area, that Idaho, that are still sundown towns. And I've also had friends that like who would do Warp Tour or other tours of that nature, where like who've gone to Idaho and they're like, yeah, no, we're not, I don't feel safe there. Like, I don't leave the venue or I don't leave the festival grounds because I don't know what could happen to me.
Yeah.
And so like that was just saying, like, I'm just like, well, so reading all this, I'm like, well, I don't care what happens to Chad and Lori now. Like, y'all
Yeah.
did this to yourselves. Like, not only did you kill your children and your spouses, but
Allegedly.
y'all are also probably somehow connected to white supremacists, and I don't care anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, I learned so much about Mormonism reading specifically under And When the Moon Turns to Blood, and now Under the Banner of Heaven, because I had no
Under the
idea
Banner of
that-
Heaven, you learn so much about polygamy. It's bonkers. Like, that's the book where like another one of those heavy books where like I just be like reading, especially more of the polygamy chapters. I'm like, I gotta put this down.
Yeah, which actually,
Ow.
it's funny you say that, because I mean, I think I love morbid nonfiction. I do. I had this my book club, but lately, after reading so much dark shit, like, you know, maybe I need like a little break. So I literally picked up like, you could tell my mental state right now when I pick up a romance. Like, I'm unwell right now with the amount of crap that I've been reading. I mean, it's not just the amount of stuff that I've been reading that's so dark. I'm like, okay, I need a break. So we've been chatting for about an hour and a half. I'm going to go ahead and wrap up the discussion, and I'm so happy that you guys came. This is such a fascinating topic, and I would love for you guys to read When the Moon Turns to Blood if you have not already. I have a child in my lap, so let me hang on. Definitely read this if you get a chance. So good. And then of course you're going to want to read this because they're very similar in my opinion. I am so excited. Next month we are focusing on one of my hyperfixations, Chernobyl. Midnight in Chernobyl is our next book for May, and then we are discussing that. Good question, Patricia. When are we discussing that?
Reminds me, I have to go home and, well, not go home, I am home. Walk into my apartment and put list out all of my other Chernobyl books for everyone.
Oh, yes,
I
please.
haven't done that yet.
There's a couple that I would like to also read on top of this. Also, it's funny, I think it was Alex, but I don't think Alex is here anymore, talking about how there was nothing at the end of the Doomsday Mother that indicated any of his sources. I actually put a tab at the bottom.
Oh yeah.
Whenever this is where the sources begin. Like 3/4 of the way in are where the sources begin for Midnight.
Yes, I'm so excited. I can't wait to look at that.
Oh, you are still here. Hi, I didn't
Here.
see your face. I was like, where is she? Okay, and I'll see her. Midnight in Chernobyl, next book. Super exciting. Oh, that is Memorial Day weekend. Well, maybe I will change the date. Thank you for saying that. I will keep you updated. Make a decision.
Meow.
So yep, and then we did decide I decided, because I felt like we were not reading enough about spooky shit, which I don't even know if this is going to be terribly spooky, but I've had this for a long time and I've been wanting to read it. So May, June, I don't know my months. June's book is going to be Life with the Afterlife by Amy Bruni. She was on the Ghost Adventures show. I'm sorry, Ghost Hunters show. She was with Taps for a little while, and then she has her own show now with Adam Berry called Kindred Spirits. I'm super excited to read this.
I love Kindred Spirits.
It's so good, and it's fairly short and very large font. So hopefully this will be a quick read. And I did get this for Christmas a couple years ago, and my mom got me a nameplate or a signed signature plate for the book. So those are our next two books. I am going to be posting fairly soon. My God, do I not know the months? June, July, and August's picks very soon. We like to plan ahead just so everybody has a chance to get a hold of the book, get a hold of the audiobook, however you would like to read it or consume it. Oh my God. And yeah, so thank you guys so much for hanging out. We're going to now pop into our after party. Let me go ahead and pause this.